sharp crack echoes through the empty room. You feel the cold air brush the back of your neck, as if an invisible door had just opened behind you. Outside, the rain taps against the window, but what really unsettles you is the strange feeling that something inside you is no longer trustworthy. Your mind is clouded. The memories you once swore were true now feel fragile, blurred. You try to pull up a scene from the past, but it warps like fractured glass. And in that moment, while you're struggling to find a solid fragment of reality, that voice, calm, almost sweet, says, "You're overreacting. That never happened the way you think it did." A shiver runs down your spine, and for a moment, you start to wonder, if you can't trust your own memory, then maybe the truth you know is nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. You try to argue. You open your mouth, but the words feel heavy, as if they had walked through a dark hallway before reaching your tongue. Meanwhile, the other person watches you with a smile that never reaches their eyes. They don't yell. They don't slam the table. They just repeat with that unsettling calm. "You always twist things. I think the way you remember is betraying you." And suddenly, what once felt like a solid memory turns into a fog-covered field. You know what you saw, what you heard, but now you're not sure anymore. At first, you laughed off those lines. You blamed them on stubbornness, on pride. But they came back, always at the exact moments when you try to point out something wrong or set a boundary. Over time, each repetition carves small cracks inside you, like drops of water that, day after day, sink into the stone. Gaslighting doesn't start like a wildfire. It starts like a single candle burning in the corner of a room, unnoticed, almost harmless. But as you go on living, that flame is fed until, without realizing it, your entire world is lit only by that distorted light. You take a deep breath. The faint smell of burnt coffee drifts through the air, but your mind can't focus on it. It's too busy trying to figure out if the conversation you had yesterday really happened, or if it was just another flaw in your memory. Maybe you ask yourself now, has this happened to me? But the more dangerous question is another. Is it happening right now, and I can't see it? Because the gaslighter rarely shows up as an obvious villain. They can be the person you love most, or someone whose opinion matters too much to ignore. Someone who knows your insecurities and exactly where to press to make you doubt yourself. That doubt isn't an accident. It's calculated. Every ambiguous sentence, every joke that leaves a bitter taste, every subtle contradiction, is a piece carefully placed until the final puzzle is a version of you that no longer even trusts your own reflection. While that voice insists you're overreacting, a part of you wants to scream that you know the truth. But another part stays silent, because it's no longer sure if the truth it holds even exists. Manipulation doesn't win when the lie is told. It wins the moment you start doubting yourself. And if you believe you'd spot the game too early to be caught, the next step will show you that the most effective manipulation isn't the one you see coming. It's the one that seeps into the tiny concessions you make every single day. You're in the kitchen, washing the dishes. Warm water runs over your fingers, the scent of citrus detergent mixing with the faint steam rising from the sink. From the living room, the words drift in, muffled. You only catch the end. You're always making a big deal out of nothing. For a moment, you feel the urge to respond, but you glance at the stack of plates, at the clock showing it's already late at night, and decide to let it slide. After all, it's not worth starting a fight over every comment, right? That's how it begins. Not with major confrontations, but with small surrenders. The times you choose not to correct a lie just to avoid an argument, or when you swallow your frustration so you don't ruin the mood. These concessions feel like your choices, and in a way they are, but they happen inside a playing field the other person built. And in that game, the rules aren't made for you to win. Maybe you remember a specific day. You were certain about a simple detail, a date, a place, a conversation, and yet you ended up apologizing. Not because you changed your mind, but because it felt safer to give in. Every time you adapt yourself to avoid friction, something happens in silence. Their version of events grows stronger, and yours fades. Have you felt it? That strange mix of peace and discomfort after letting it go. As if you'd gained time, but lost a piece of yourself in the process. That's the power of gaslighting. It doesn't need to win every battle. It only needs you to get tired of fighting. And once that happens, what once was unacceptable starts to feel normal. The most dangerous moment is when you realize you no longer trust your own reaction. Every thought passes through the filter of one question. Am I overreacting? That question is the key, because it doesn't just open the door to twisting what you saw. It also makes room for planting memories in your mind, memories that never existed. You're in the bedroom, putting clothes away. The scent of fabric softener still clings to the fabric, and the warm yellow light from the bedside lamp makes everything feel almost cozy until the conversation begins. Do you remember that time I warned you about this, and you ignored me? You frown. You don't remember. In fact, you're certain it never happened. But the voice goes on, calm, as if describing something obvious. Yes, it was on a Tuesday. You were wearing a blue shirt. I even said it would go wrong, and you laughed. Your mind tries to reach for the scene. Nothing. The absence feels almost physical, like there's a hole in your head. And then, slowly, almost like a blurred photograph, an image begins to take shape. You see flashes, an ordinary day, the blue shirt, a confused exchange of words. But you no longer know if you're remembering or just imagining what was described. A chill creeps up your spine. The confusion isn't only in your mind, it's in your body. Your chest tightens, the air feels heavier. This is the power of suggestion. When someone describes an event with concrete details, even if invented, your brain tries to fill in the blanks to create a coherent story. And in that instant, imagination and memory blur together. In gaslighting, this is pure gold. Because once you start accepting false memories, manipulation stops being passive and becomes active. The gaslighter is no longer just making you doubt the past. They're building an alternate past and putting you inside it. Have you ever felt this? That sensation of remembering something you never lived. But that feels so real, it's impossible to be absolutely certain it's false. These fabricated memories aren't harmless. They serve as evidence against you. Evidence that exists only in the mind of the one controlling the narrative. And, little by little, in yours too. Maybe, not long from now, you'll catch yourself apologizing for something you never did. Or defending a version of the story that wasn't even yours, but now feels as real as any legitimate memory. And make no mistake, this is calculated. Every invented detail is chosen to reinforce the idea that you're flawed, forgetful, or emotionally unstable. And the more you accept, the easier it becomes for the other person to rewrite the next chapters of your life. You begin to wonder, what if I really am wrong? That doubt is the final trap. Because once you believe you can't trust yourself, any story can be planted as absolute truth. And when that happens, the next step is no longer about the past. It's about controlling the present and shaping every decision you make from this moment on. You're about to reply to a message. The words are right at your fingertips, but you pause. You remember how, last time, something you said was twisted and turned against you. Your chest tightens. A small knot forms in your stomach. Without even realizing it, you rewrite the sentence so it sounds more safe. This is the present being shaped. There are no shouts, no direct prohibitions. The manipulation happens in silence, inside your own head, before any action ever finds a voice. You start anticipating the other person's reactions. You picture the tone laced with sarcasm, the raised eyebrows, the calculated pause before reply. And to avoid all that, you adjust. You swap words, change plans, even alter your opinions. At first, it feels like prudence. But over time, you realize you're living according to an emotional thermometer that isn't yours. Maybe you cancel plans, afraid of creating unnecessary situations. Or you hold back from sharing an achievement, just to avoid a comment that would shrink it. Maybe you even smile, when what you really wanted was to roll your eyes. They're small concessions, but together, they weigh like a stone on your chest. Have you felt that? That sense of measuring every step, as if the floor were lined with invisible traps? Where even the sound of your own voice has to be carefully calibrated. The control of the present in gaslighting is subtle, but deep. When a manipulator controls your decisions now, they no longer need to bother rewriting the past. They already know that, little by little, you'll act according to the script they've created. And here's the most dangerous part. You start to believe you're choosing of your own free will. But in reality, you're just following lines they drew, with your own hand holding the pen. The human mind avoids pain and conflict. When the brain associates an action with discomfort, be it an argument, a cutting glance, or a veiled accusation, it instinctively retreats. The gaslighter exploits that instinct like a conductor who knows exactly which string to pull to change the melody. And so, the present is redesigned. The decisions that shape who you are no longer come from within. They become reflections of the limits and expectations the other person imposed. With time, it reaches even the smallest things. The clothes you choose, the tone you speak in, the kind of humor you allow yourself to show. You mold yourself to fit into a smaller and smaller space, until you can't even remember what it felt like to breathe outside it. And when that control is solidified, there's room for something even darker. Not just manipulating what you do, but deciding the future you believe you deserve. You wake up, and there's already a weight in the air. It's as if the day arrives with a gray cloud strapped to your shoulders. Before you even get out of bed, your mind starts playing out conversations, reactions, possible conflicts. But the strange thing is, in every one of these imagined scenarios, you end up either at fault or defeated. This is how gaslighting pushes beyond the present. It hijacks your future. It's not just about what happened yesterday or today. It's about planting images in your mind of what might happen tomorrow. Images that shape your choices before you ever have the chance to live them. Maybe in the past, you thought about taking a new job, moving to another city, or simply going out to meet new people. But then comes the voice, the one you don't even need to hear out loud. It's going to go wrong. You won't be able to handle it. Remember what happened last time, and instantly, a cold wave rises in your stomach. Your chest tightens. The air feels heavier. It's your body reacting to the fear of something that hasn't even happened. This is the most subtle trap, making you give up before you try. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The gaslighter knows this instinctively. They plant fears and doubts so quietly that you start calling them just the way I am. Think about the last time you walked away from something you wanted. Do you remember feeling a wall inside you? That sense of it's not worth it. Now ask yourself, did that idea come from you? Or was it planted? Maybe it came in the form of a disdainful look when you shared your plans. Or a cutting joke, wrapped in the disguise of harmless humor. Or even calculated silence, just enough to make you uncomfortable enough to retreat. Little by little, you begin to live in a straight line. No turns, no risks, no spark. Not because you no longer want, but because you already know it won't work. And here's the detail almost no one notices. When you give up your future out of fear, you're not just avoiding failures. You're denying yourself victories that could change everything. Maybe you've been living for years inside a prison without realizing it. A prison made not of walls, but of predictions. But what if that future wasn't real? What if your vision has been distorted, not by who you are, but by what someone else wants you to believe? That's the crack where the light begins to slip in. And in the next step, that crack will become impossible to ignore. You're sitting in a cafe. The smell of freshly ground coffee is strong, almost suffocating. The clinking of cups echoes like a distant metronome, marking time that feels painfully slow. Outside, the street moves at its usual pace. But inside your head, nothing feels normal. You can't stop replaying the conversation from yesterday. You remember exactly what was said, the tone of his voice, the words, the way his hands moved. And then, the sentence, "I never said that." You're imagining things, like a crack running through glass. The certainty you begins to splinter. You try to push back, but something catches in your throat. What if he's right? The scene that was once vivid now feels clouded, as if someone had smudged your memories. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden part of ourselves, the one we don't acknowledge or don't want to see. But here, it isn't your shadow. It's his projected onto you until you start to believe it's been there all along. And Jung also said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. This is the silent turning point, when manipulation stops questioning only the facts and begins to reshape who you believe you are. You start monitoring yourself before you speak. You rehearse every sentence, every gesture, every facial expression, and the more you watch yourself, the heavier your chest feels, until you realize you're shrinking, not in body, but in presence. Has it ever happened to you? Completely changing the way you act, just so you don't give someone a reason. And here's the darkest part. When your identity starts to unravel, the gaslighting no longer has to push as hard. You begin doing the work of silencing yourself. Days pass. The memories, once alive, are now like photographs forgotten in the back of a drawer, yellowed, fragile. And in the quiet of that confusion, a new narrative is being written. Not by you, but by someone who knows exactly how to manipulate every crack in your perception. The next step in this mental prison is the most dangerous, and also the hardest to see. You wake in the middle of the night. The room is far too quiet, yet your heart pounds as if you've been running for miles. The darkness feels heavier, the air thicker. A faint scent of damp wood drifts in from the closed window. Something is wrong. You know it, but you can't quite name it. These past few days, you've caught yourself replaying conversations in your head, and always ending with the sense that you got lost somewhere between the words, as if someone had erased entire fragments of your memory and rewritten them in invisible ink. In the morning, you decide to meet friends, hoping to quiet your mind. The cafe is full. The muffled hum of voices blends with the sweet aroma of coffee and the hiss of the espresso machine. But when one of them mentions something you supposedly told them weeks ago, you freeze. Because you don't remember saying it. Or do you? The warmth of the coffee in your hand does nothing to stop the chill creeping up your spine. This is the point where gaslighting becomes its most dangerous. It's no longer about debating facts. Now, it's about controlling the entire narrative of your life. Control over what you think. Control over what you feel. Control over what you believe yourself to be. Carl Jung once said, "People don't remember what happened to them, but rather what they interpret as having happened." And this is exactly where the manipulator moves in, altering the interpretations until the event itself no longer matters. Have you ever stopped to wonder how many of your memories are truly yours, and how many were shaped by someone else? This is the moment when internal isolation begins. You don't need to be locked in a room. It's enough to be locked inside a distorted version of yourself. And once that happens, escape takes far more than courage. It takes being able to see the door and believe it's real. But before you reach the exit, you need to understand one final thing. The key to breaking this cycle is rarely the one you think it is. You're in a silent room, its walls lined with paintings. One of them catches your eye, a vibrant work, full of vivid colors and details that seem to pulse with life. But when you pass by a few days later, something is different. The once blue sky now has a grayish tint. A small figure in the corner, once smiling, now carries an almost imperceptible sadness. The owner of the house, a soft-spoken man with a constant smile, swears you're imagining things. "It's always been that way," he says, in a tone so assured it nearly makes you doubt your own memory. Weeks pass. Each time you visit, the painting changes in small, subtle ways. An added shadow, a detail erased, a glow that fades, and always the same answer: you're remembering it wrong. On your last visit, the painting is unrecognizable. The sky has turned dark, the figures are distorted, even the frame looks more worn. You remember the original clearly, or think you do. The fireplace crackles in the background, spreading warmth that clashes with the chill running down your neck. There's a faint scent of fresh paint in the air, as if the picture had just been altered. And in the corner, the man is still smiling, a smile that now seems to know something you don't. Carl Jung once said that what we deny in the conscious mind lives and acts in the unconscious. Gaslighting doesn't just distort your perception, it invades your identity, planting the seed of doubt in the most intimate ground you possess, your own mind. The most unsettling part is that, over time, you start painting alongside him without even realizing it. You hold the brush and alter your own memory, so it will fit the narrative imposed on you. So the question remains, in the painting of your life, who is really holding the brush? You take a deep breath. The air feels heavier now, as if every inhale carries mixed memories, some yours, others that may never have existed. Gaslighting isn't a single blow. It's a silent craft, almost an art form, reshaping the landscape of your mind until you accept an invented scene as reality. Small insinuations, half-truths, calculated omissions, each detail sculpting a new you that serves the one pulling the strings. Carl Jung once said that when we drift too far from who we are, the unconscious begins to collect its debt. You can ignore the signs for a while, but sooner or later, they return in dreams, in memory lapses, in a strange feeling of not recognizing yourself in your own reflection. Now imagine looking back and realizing entire moments of your life were painted by someone else's hand. How many of those memories truly bear your signature? And how many are brushstrokes from someone who never had your best interests at heart? The silence in this moment is heavy. You feel the cold draft slipping through the crack in the door, almost like a warning. It's the kind of feeling that calls for action. Because if you don't take control of your own narrative, someone else will. And by the time you notice, it may already be too late. If this message struck something deep within you, it may reach someone you know. Share this video. It's more than just a click. It could be an invitation for someone else to wake up before they're completely lost. We'll meet again in the shadows of the next hidden truth.